everybody today to our first Network Cafe of 2022. Happy New Year, everybody. I hope folks had a relaxing, restful break. So we're thrilled to have you all here today. We've had a lot of interest in this topic, thinking about policy at the state level related to food systems. And we've got a great panel here today to share with us some of the critical legislation and some of the big issues coming up that you might consider getting involved with, and letting your representatives know how you feel about some of these bills. And Peter, we'll ask you to repeat some of what you've said a little bit later on, but just to let everybody know that even though the sessions are all meeting in person this year, there is still an opportunity to attend the session virtually or just sign in, whether you oppose or are supportive of a particular bill, and we'll share that that information where you can in the chat where you can log in to attend those sessions. In the meantime, before we jump into our various speakers, I just want to remind everybody that we've got a lot of folks attending today. We have a lot of ground to cover, so we probably won't get to everybody's questions. We'll have, each of our speakers will have just about 5 minutes to tell us about some of the critical legislation that they're following in this session. And then we want to make sure we have time for at least a couple minutes of questions. I encourage everybody to put questions in the chat. If we don't get to your questions during this live session, we will reach back out to our panelists and other folks and get back to you with the answers as best as we can. And also in the meantime, just please make sure that you're on mute during the session. Thank you for keeping those distractions down. So why don't we go ahead, and I'm going to invite Rob Warner from League of Conservation Voters to join us just to check in about some of the kind of climate and food related legislation that they are keeping an eye on this term. Hi, Rob.
Hi, thanks. Good to see everyone. Happy New Year. Glad it's snowing. The first thing I'm going to do is actually tag for folks something to keep an eye on. It's obviously international in terms of climate work and food, but could certainly filter down to the state, to the federal and state level. And that is, I think many of you know, I was in Glasgow for COP26, and there wasn't a lot of discussion around food and climate that really was at the fore. That wasn't really the focus necessarily of the conference. But there was this Glasgow Food and Climate Declaration that I have tagged for folks in the agenda. And I can certainly send it around as well to a larger list. And it basically, the sort of title of it is a commitment by subnational governments, and that means anything other than national government. So that's talking about state and local, really, to tackle the climate emergency through integrated food policies and a call on national governments to act. This really will be worked on over the next number of months in the run-up to COP27 in Egypt, which will happen this November. So I do think that since this declaration has been signed by, I think, over 100 subnational governments around the globe, that it will get some needed attention and be a much more visible body of work in the run-up to COP27. So I just wanted to alert people to that and to keep an eye on it. And certainly I will send things around as they come to the fore. As far as the legislative session goes this year, everyone's off and running, as we've talked about. We have hearings that have already been scheduled. One bill that I wanted to bring to attention was Senator Khan, is the lead sponsor, but with the many other sponsors, including Representative Bixby, Senate Bill 369 relative to organic farming, and it requires the Department of Agriculture, Markets and Food to administer an organic certification program. and it makes an appropriation for that. So there is a fiscal note on the bill, has a hearing next week on the 11th at 10:15 in energy and natural resources. So one of the things, I did have a conversation with Representative Bixby earlier this week, and I'm glad he's with us because he did tag some bills around solid waste disposal, and obviously he's a sponsor of the aforementioned bill. And I invite him actually now to chime in to see if there's things top of mind that we really ought to know about and keep an eye on, particularly in his committee or anything else for that matter.
All right, so the first, I think the first priority is the Senate Bill 369, and I'm not going to go into the gory details about how that came about, but late this summer, the department realized that it didn't have the resources to meet the USDA requirements for doing the certification for processors and for livestock producers. And they sent out a letter which was very poorly worded, letting people know that they should find alternative certification. This bill is designed to allow the department to have the resources to restart that certification and continue on a more solid footing with the certification for produce farmers who are not being discontinued by the because of that resource issue. And one of the things that is really important in order to help this legislation get through is a lot of voices saying it really matters to have the certification coming from a New Hampshire body. It is under the USDA organic program, it is perfectly acceptable for farmers to get certified by any of the USDA approved certifier in the country, which could, so New Hampshire farmers would be perfectly okay getting certified by a California certifier if that certifier operated here under federal law. What matters is that the for passing this legislation is that New Hampshire farmers and New Hampshire organic consumers want to have that certification done by a New Hampshire body, and that would be the Department of Agriculture. Without a demonstrated demand for it, it's going to be a little bit harder to sell. So that's a critical bill. There are a number of fairly small bills that are in environment and agriculture in the House. Nothing particularly ground shaking, but there are several bills that have to do with solid waste, which would do things like there are several study committee bills which would create study committees to look at better ways of disposing of the waste we have and the waste we receive from outside of the state, or maybe ways to prevent that out of state waste from coming in. There are also several bills that are designed to slow down the permitting of new landfills, and the obvious issue, issue on the forefront is the one that's being planned by Casella right next to Forest Lake State Park. And there are several different approaches to saying, well, let's slow down on the permitting or create more barriers to permitting to make sure that the area around a potential landfill is better defended. So that's probably the most important stuff going on. Other than that, there are I mean, Rob might have noticed something that didn't strike me as being huge, earth shaking, but that's pretty much what I see.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks.
And you mentioned a couple of those bills. I don't think we have the numbers for those solid waste bills, but maybe we'll reach out to you after the meeting and
Right.
get those out to everybody so that
Yeah.
you can take a look for yourselves. But I want to make sure, yeah.
So I can just, if you go to the general court website and you go and you click on advanced bill search and you put in 2022 in the year, and you put in environment and agriculture as the committee, then you'll get a complete list of the bills that are in committee. There are a few that are left over from last year that are on interim study that are listed near the top, but all the bill numbers over 1,000 are this year's bills.
Great. Are there any questions or further comments for Rob and Peter? And Rob Johnson, I'm wondering, I know we had you sort of last, but while we're talking about all the ag related bills, I don't know, do you want to jump in now or and talk about any of the things Farm Bureau related stuff? Oh, you're muted.
There we go. I can if you like, Karen.
Yeah, sure. Why don't we do that, and we'll sort of because Peter mentioned that maybe there were some things in the Ag and Environment Committee that you're keeping an eye on that other folks that he didn't necessarily see. Was there any other priorities for you all?
Well, there are. Actually, one of our bigger priorities, or probably our biggest priority this session, is really on the landowner side of things.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there was a bill introduced last year that would have enabled the use of live action game cameras. And we didn't take a position on that. Our concern was in doing research that landowner permission was not required for somebody to place a game camera on your property, a surveillance device. We realized that, we were a little concerned. The state of Maine has a statute. And so at the hearing last year, we introduced an amendment to require written landowner permission before anyone could place a camera of any type, a game camera of any type on your property. And so that bill actually, they just voted on it the other day, and it's got through the House. We'll go over to the Senate. But that's something that is, I think it should be a concern to everybody, that you want to know if somebody has a surveillance device on your property, you should, they should have your permission. You should know about it. So that's something. And then there's a second bill that's up for hearing this week that would, first of all, the game camera bill is House Bill 490. And there's a separate bill this week that has been introduced that would enable the use of drones on the statewide trail system. And it may sound innocuous, but most people don't realize that our statewide trail system is 80% or so on private property. And that's the snowmobile trail that many of you may use and such. So that's something that we are strongly opposed to. And that's the landowner bills are something that we follow quite closely. Obviously, our membership has an interest in that. And one bill that I don't think has been mentioned yet, that's tied a little closer directly to agriculture, at least we'd consider on our side, is there's a Senate bill that would establish an invasive species program within the Department of Agriculture. And not that they're not addressing the issue now, but this would do it in a more organized and coordinated fashion. And it's something that is, I think, especially if some of you travel into the state south of us, you see where the invasives right along the highway have just gotten out of control. And we really, I think, need to get ahead of the game in this state as much as we can. And I think many of us on our farming operations are deal with invasive species all the time, every day. So that's one to watch. And I think it has good support all around. And then, as it's been mentioned earlier, we are involved in following the organic certification bill. We believe that there should be a certification program within our Department of Agriculture and a self-funded program, which we think is doable and is very, very important for the reasons that have been mentioned. And then Representative Bixby mentioned, there are a number of other bills that affect very targeted people or farming operations. There's the bill that we asked to have introduced that is relative to driver license requirements for H2A agricultural workers. We've had some growers that have had issues. Evidently, when you have going through a Department of Labor audit, you're required to follow state law. Well, New Hampshire state law requires all H2A workers to have a New Hampshire driver's license. We've had a couple growers that have been fined because going through the audit process, some of their H2A workers didn't have New Hampshire licenses. So to be clear, they were not driving and found out to have a license. It was just the paperwork said that they didn't have one. They weren't driving. And so we're hoping to clear that up. Basically, what we're asking for is reciprocity in line with what is already exist in Vermont and Massachusetts, and we believe in all of New England. So that's kind of a targeted one. There's a bill relative to bear damage. For years, bear damage payments, and bear really can do a job on corn crops. And out of the state's general fund for years, they pay bear damage. It's an application made to Fish and Game. If it gets Fish and Game approves it and sends it on to the governor's office, and they would expand the funds.
Do you have, Rob, I'm just sorry to interrupt because I do want to move us along and make sure we have time for questions for all those bills and then the ones that Peter talked about. Is there a place on the Farm Bureau website where people can go to see the bills that you specifically are following? Because you mentioned a whole lot of them just now. So is there a place where?
Yeah. If they go on and they take a look at our publications and all, you'll find them.
Okay, or if you have a chance in the chat, if you have those bill numbers and can put them in the chat, then that's something we can put in the notes as well.
Okay.
And put the links to those so that everybody who's attending here today, they'll get a link to those bills as well. Yep,
good enough.
And okay, quickly, thank you so much.
One more. Yeah. As you'll see, there's a bill that will it provides some clarity and kind of revamps the agriculture in the classroom committee, which is a committee. It's something that's a nationwide program that we house at Farm Bureau, have for years. We provide funding and support. And a few years back, Commissioner Merrill was able to get they made it a committee at the department and also to providing some funding. So there was this committee that existed before and this legislation that's on the books, and it just kind of melds it together and better organizes it. So it's something that's, it's important for all of us, for our youth to be educated. And
definitely. Yeah, that's really great to hear. So, Rob, if you can, in the chat, maybe type in, or if you want to send us an email later with some of those specific bill names, we can make sure in our notes to send them back out to everybody, so that folks who are really interested in following some of those particular bills can find them online and know when to support them. And there was a question in the chat. We do have notes. Colleen's taking notes today, and we will be sending out the recording along with notes from today's session. So really quick, maybe just a few minutes for questions before we jump to our next speaker. Questions for Peter Bixby, for Rob Werner, or for Rob Johnson about some of these food and ag related bills, or even just about the legislative process. Any questions that came up? Eric, I see, had a question in the chat. Is the Department of Ag the only New Hampshire body under consideration for administering the organic certification program? Anybody want to?
I can jump in on that.
Yeah.
The answer is yes. And I think that it's also the only body that has expressed any interest in doing so. The certification used to be under NOFA New Hampshire back in the late 90s, and they realized they couldn't manage it and asked the department to take over. And the department's been doing it since the early 2000s. And I don't know if there's any other body that would be positioned to do that. So the options other than the department are essentially any other accredited certifier. And I know that a number of the people have spoken to us have said, we really want it to be in New Hampshire. We don't want to have to go to Bay State certifiers. We don't want to have to go to MOFGA. We don't want to have to go to NOFA, New York. So there's a definitely in the community, there's a desire to have it still based in the department.
Great. Thank you, Peter. Oh, and it looks like Julie, let's see. Julie, did you want to say anything from NOFA's perspective on the organic certification bill? Any other comments?
No, I think Representative Bixby covered it, but they are taking testimony on Tuesday at the hearing, so it'd be great to have people come out in support of the bill.
Great. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. And again, just to clarify, I've got a lot of messages in the chat from folks like, where's the link to this bill? How do I find out more? We will be sending out notes with links to that and links to the website, the main website, where you can find out the dates of the hearings and all of that. So stay tuned. Any other questions? Questions, comments? Okay, so why don't we move
All right,
on?
I just want to make one quick comment on the ag and classroom in the classroom bill. That's been assigned to the education committee. I don't know when the hearing is, but one thing that would be good to have for people to write in as commentary is to request that NOFA, New Hampshire, and Farm to School get added to the list of members of that committee.
That's a great suggestion, Peter. There's been some conversation online around ag education and thinking about regenerative ag education and things like that. And so I think NOFA and Farm to School will be great partners to be able to bring those perspectives. That's a really awesome suggestion. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to turn it over now to Nikki. Are you going to talk to us about the Farm to School bill?
I am, yes. Thank you. It's a perfect segue. Yeah, so hi everyone. Thank you all for having me. I'm Nikki Kolb, NOFA New Hampshire's operations manager. And if you're not familiar with us, NOFA New Hampshire is the Northeast Organic Farming Association of New Hampshire. We are a statewide nonprofit dedicated to helping people build local, sustainable, healthy food systems by actively promoting organic, regenerative, and ecologically sound farming, gardening, land care practices, and eating. We are in support of the organic certification bill that Peter and Rob and Julie mentioned, of course, but I'm going to be talking a little bit today about the Local Food for Local Schools Reimbursement Bill, House Bill 1657, and how it will increase food security and resilience in New Hampshire. The New Hampshire Farm to School Network, with the sponsorship of 10 New Hampshire state legislators, have submitted the Local Food for Local Schools Reimbursement Program as a bill to the New Hampshire legislature, and the bill will fund a reimbursement program to incentivize New Hampshire school districts and food service directors to purchase 10% of their nutrition budgets on locally grown and produced food for breakfast and lunch services. K through 12 schools that participate in the National School Lunch Program will be eligible to receive reimbursements under the bill, and approximately 77% of the nearly 150 schools that participate in New Hampshire Farm to School programming already serve local food, so that's setting a strong foundation for the success of this new program. So how does it work? By reallocating $1.2 million in federal funding and investing $600,000 in state funding, the bill will inject a total of $1.8 million into the New Hampshire farm and food economy, ensuring that students across the state have access to local, healthy, nutrient-dense food. Schools will be reimbursed $1 for every $3 spent on food purchased from New Hampshire producers and fishers, and $1 for every $6 spent on food purchased from producers in other New England states. And foods that are eligible for reimbursement include dairy, fruits, vegetables, beef, poultry, eggs, pork, sustainably caught fish, cider, and maple syrup, so many options. Foods can be purchased directly from producers, New Hampshire or regional food hubs, and also conventional distributors. And the program would be run by the Department of Education. So why is it necessary? In addition to the health benefits for children, the bill will help improve our local economy by keeping federal money in New Hampshire, and it will increase business and resiliency for Granite State farmers, producers, and fishers. It will also provide students with a deeper understanding of where their food comes from and what foods are grown and produced in our state and region. And all of that's critical because today, only 6% of food consumed in New Hampshire is produced here. Over the last 2 years, we've seen how a largely import-based food economy can be affected by external conditions like the pandemic and climate change, leading to food insecurity. Supply chains are still being impacted by the ripple effect of COVID-19, as we know, and the strain of climate change, and also market consolidation. The Local Food for Local Schools reimbursement bill will increase food security in New Hampshire. It will decrease our reliance on food imports and help ensure that our state continues to have the ability to react to ongoing stressors impacting our national and global food system. So we're excited about how the reimbursement bill will open up new markets for our state's farmers, producers, and fishers, improve school nutrition, keep federal dollars in New Hampshire, invest in our farm and food economy, and educate children about local food. The bill is a proven model. It has bipartisan support, and it's based on similar legislation in Maine, New York, and Vermont. The prime sponsor is Representative Alexis Simpson, and there are 9 other co-sponsors in the House, including Representative Megan Murray, who I think is on the call and is working closely with Representative Simpson. And there are many ways that you can support the bill. So a hearing is taking place next Wednesday, January 12th at 10:30 in the morning in Concord. If you're interested in providing testimony, that would be wonderful. And you can reach out to me at NOFA if you would like some help with any talking points. We do have a fantastic toolkit that provides additional information, including talking points and social media images, and also 2 letters we encourage folks to sign. One is for individuals and one's for organizations who want to support the bill. And we have several reimbursement bill events lined up this month, including a virtual Q&A with state legislators on Friday, January 21st at noon. So please visit our website to learn more about the events, find resources, sign on to the letters, and subscribe to our mailing list for upcoming details on all of that. And we'll put that in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Nikki. So any questions or other comments from other folks who've been involved in supporting this particular bill? Again, feel free to put questions in the chat, or if you want to raise your hand and chime in, now's the time. Representative Murray, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, hi, thank you. We are super, super excited about this bill. And I think that one of the things that, as a mom and a former educator myself, this has such a huge opportunity to really change how we see school food and lunches and sort of that natural connection in the classroom, in addition to all of the things that Nikki talked about supporting and diversifying our food infrastructure, which is hugely important. I think we have seen over the last 3 years a shift and in sentiment of what is local and regional, and how that is really important in New Hampshire and our small farm community that we do have, which is growing and robust, and we want to keep seeing it grow. So one of the things that I think is really important to folks who are listening to the call is to have folks have a conversation about with their communities, like share with your PTAs, your friends, your other, get involved that way, and follow us, because we'll start obviously in the House, but then it will go through the Senate, and we'll have an opportunity to do those other sort of outreach opportunities like Nikki had mentioned with the answer series. And it's a bipartisan bill that we're really, really excited to have. So thank you for having me, and I'll happily take questions if you have them.
Thank you so much. Yeah, any other questions? I did see a question here about if the hearing is in person or Zoom, and it sounds like it's an in-person hearing, but just want to remind everybody that you can still sign in for the hearing in support of a particular bill online. So even if you can't get to Concord to the hearing, you can still sign in support of the bill. And again, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, if you scroll up in the chat, I put the entire calendar for the month, but I think I saw that Stacy Perslow linked it exactly to that bill as well. So you can go there and submit testimony, and it'll just ask you if you're representing yourself or another constituency.
Okay, great. And I'm going to put it again just
yeah.
down below.
And I believe that the hearings will also be live streamed. You can't interact, but you can watch the hearing. I'm not sure of the link for that, but I'm pretty sure, I think there was an intention to do that.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions about the local food for local schools? Other comments, questions? Okay, moving right along then. All right, so Tiffany, I think that we are on to you at this point.
Great, thank you. So my internet is a little bit slow. I got a lot of notifications that it's slow. So hopefully if I am starting to break up, please stop me. So I'm going to go ahead and put in the chat the food insecurity bills that I'm going to talk about to sort of hopefully get ahead of some of the questions here. But so I'm Tiffany Dodier. I am from New Hampshire Hunger Solutions, and one of the hats that I wear as the Community Engagement Director is to coordinate and co-facilitate the New Hampshire Food Access Coalition. Yes.
Tiffany,
Yes.
so I know my internet connection is unstable also, but I wonder if you are breaking up, if you could turn off your video. So I'm not sure now if it's me or if it's you at this point. I don't know. Can anybody else say, was Tiffany breaking up for anybody else, or was it?
No,
just...
she looked good to me.
No.
Yeah,
me too.
Sorry.
Good. Thank you so much. Thanks. I know, I think the snow is messing with everybody's internet right now. So, but yeah, so I was saying one of the hats that I wear is the co-facilitator and coordinator for the New Hampshire Food Access Coalition, along with Erin, of course. And so we talk about all of these bills in our meeting. So if you're interested, I did put the link to join that mailing list in that document at the very top. So if you're interested in staying up to date about these bills, and we also update about the farm to school bill as well, please feel free to join that mailing list. So without further ado, the very first bill that I want to talk about is SB 404. Which is establishing a supplemental nutrition assistance outreach program.
Really?
I think we have some people that are unmuted. There we go. Perfect. So we have, you'll see that this bill, when you pull it up, is named Establishing a Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which is actually establishing the outreach program. So that might be a little bit confusing for some folks, but we tried to change it, they wouldn't let us. But the primary sponsor for that bill is Senator Becky Whitley. And what this bill is doing is requiring the state to file an outreach plan with the Federal Nutrition Service at USDA. And with this, there hasn't been a state outreach program for SNAP for several years at this point. And so what filing this outreach plan does is it draws down federal funds for us. And so this is intended to be a budget neutral bill, meaning that we're not asking any money from the state for planning or implementation of the outreach plan, but we are requiring that the Department of Health and Human Services raise the funds or partner with organizations that will raise the fund to plan and implement this plan. So we're partnering with DHHS in all of this work, and hopefully this is just to ensure that we don't go several years without a plan. So that bill is scheduled to be heard in the Senate Health and Human Service Committee on the 26th of this month at 9:30 in the morning, which is just before our monthly Food Access Coalition meeting. So if you want to come to any of that, then we can get you in the loop. So the next bill that I'll talk about is SB 403, which is reestablishing the special supplementary nutrition program for women, infants, and children. So the WIC Farmers Market program, basically. And that hasn't, again, been in existence for several years, and it was defunct mostly due to low participation. However, with now the SNAP incentive programs, which allow SNAP participants to go to farmers market and double their food dollars. There's more infrastructure in place for that. So we're confident that we can bring the participation back up for that particular program. And so what it would do is it would provide $30 per WIC participant over the 3-month period. I believe it's June, July, and August for the summer months, for them to be able to purchase fresh fruits and vegetables at farmers markets. And so we are requesting state funds for this. We're aware there is going to be budget overage and a lot of money coming into the state from the federal perspective. So we're requesting $300,000 of appropriation for this, but that also draws down federal funds in addition. So that's how we can make it out to that $30 per participant. So that one, again, is sponsored by Senator Becky Whitley. She's been a wonderful champion and partner of ours at the Food Access Coalition, and it's scheduled to be heard at the Health and Human Services Senate Committee on the 26th, same day as the bill that I mentioned previously at 9:15 in the morning. So for these particular bills, you can, if you want more details on those, you can reach out to me directly for that. The next few bills that yes.
We've had a couple people ask in the chat the same question. Is it $30 per month or $30 over 3 months?
Thank you. Thank you for pointing that out. So it's $30 over 3 months. And so it's the way the program works, they can't split it up by month. So it doesn't seem like a lot, but however, it's $30 per participant over those 3 months. And also many of these participants we're sort of anticipating are also SNAP participants as well. So therefore they're going to, on top of doubling their SNAP dollars, also get an additional $30 over those 3 months. So great question. Thank you for pointing that out for me, Nicole. So the next couple of bills that I'll talk about, I'll just touch on really briefly. We do talk about them and help support them in the Food Access Coalition, but the main organization that is promoting and helping with the advocacy or driving the advocacy of these bills is the American Heart Association. And so these all have to do with school lunches and also water in schools. So the first being HB 1561 relative to school nutrition standards. So that one seeks to codify science-based nutrition guidelines for children within the New Hampshire standards for school meals. So it is making a request of about $450,000 for fiscal years 23, 24, and 25. That is scheduled to be heard in the House Education Committee on January 12th at 1 p.m. The next one is relative to the time allowed for public school students to eat lunch. So they're seeking to have no less than 20 minutes for seated time to consume lunch. And again, that one is scheduled for January 18th at 9:30 a.m. And then the third bill, all of these 3 bills are sponsored by Representative Brody Deshays, a Republican out of Wolfboro. So expecting to hopefully have some bipartisan support on this. He's wonderful to chat with and very passionate about school meals and nutrition. So really exciting to talk to him. So the last one, HB 1564, requiring school districts to provide breakfast for students, seeks to do just that, require breakfast to be served at schools to students in schools. So these, this one will also request funds. It doesn't have a fiscal note attached to it just yet, but that one is being heard January 18th at 10:30 in the morning. And the last one, not exactly food security related, but I wanted to throw it in there for the American Heart Association. They're also promoting a bill, SB 233, relative to water bottle filling stations, seeking to require all school buildings under new construction and schools undergoing substantial renovations in New Hampshire to have water bottle filling stations. So that is scheduled for the Senate Education Committee, January 11th at 9:30. So I know I threw tons of information at you just now. I'm happy to take your questions, time permitting, of course.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tiffany. And that's a great summary that you provided us. I think that's many people are finding it super helpful. So please chime in with questions for Tiffany. Looks like we got a few coming in. Any idea how many New Hampshire schools do not provide school breakfast now? It's a good question.
I wish I knew this figure off the top of my head. I can tell you we're 47th in the nation for school breakfast participation, meaning schools that do offer school breakfast. So our participation in New Hampshire is pretty abysmal. I don't know the exact number off the top of my head. And something that I'll just throw out there too, that the AHA is very aware of, is this is a really hard time for schools with staffing and sourcing food and all of these things. So I think most of these will take effect in 2023, but it's kind of one of those, there's so much focus on it right now that it's kind of like a now or never, and we can at least start the conversation at the moment. And if it doesn't pass this year, then I think they're planned to go at it again in another year. So.
Great. That was a great question. Any other questions for Tiffany about the bills she spoke about?
I actually have a question. Sorry, it's Erin again. I don't have my video on because my internet's so bad. And I'm sorry, Tiffany, if you actually already said this, because I was really going in and out there. How will the WIC program intersect with like Granite State Market Match? Will WIC participants be able to take advantage of Granite State Market Match and double that $30 of produce if they shop at a Granite State Market Match market? Do you know?
So it's the programs will likely work together, and it will be an RFP that the state puts out for an organization to administer that program. And of course, the New Hampshire Food Bank administers the Double Up Food Bucks and Granite State Market Match program. So they're very keen on applying for that RFP and would work well with it. However, the money for those two comes from separate buckets. And so the SNAP incentive programs comes from a completely different bucket and doubles their SNAP dollars, whereas this WIC would come from, for those that don't know much about WIC, you are allowed to buy certain things rather than have a dollar amount of food usually. This would give them a dollar amount specifically for farmers markets, and that would be that $30 over the 3 months, and it comes from a different bucket than their normal benefits. So I hope that helps to answer that question.
Yeah, so they wouldn't necessarily get to they wouldn't get to take advantage of Double Up or Granite State Market Match with their WIC dollars. But if they also have SNAP in addition to WIC, they could also get use their SNAP money and participate in Granite State Market Match in addition to using their WIC card. Right.
And currently there is no WIC dollars per se, and they can't go to a farmer's market and purchase food with WIC benefits. And so what it's really doing is just giving them $30 of WIC benefit to purchase at farmers markets.
Great.
Hi, this is Susan Winnock. I'm the WIC Director for Community Action Program, Belknap, Merrimack Counties. And to clarify, this might make it a little bit clearer. These are completely separate funds from WIC. These are WIC Farmers Market Nutrition dollars that come from a completely different allocation from USDA. I'm not totally familiar with the Double Up concept with WIC. I haven't heard any other WIC local agencies across the country that I'm, communicate with on a regular basis talk about Double Up and WIC. It's mostly related to SNAP. So it's hard because it's called WIC Farmers Market Nutrition Program, but it's a completely separate program from WIC. But it is the benefits would be issued to current eligible WIC participants. So it's usually administered by the local WIC agencies distributing I guess we're using coupons. We're not going to be using an electronic benefit because New Hampshire doesn't have an option for electronic benefit transfer at the farmers markets. I don't know if that was helpful, but just remember it's two separate pots of money and two separate allocations from USDA, and they're only connected because they are both intended for the WIC participants.
Okay. Thank you so much, Susan. Yeah, that's really helpful. I think, bottom line, This is another great bill, just like we got the nutrition incentives bill to support Granite State Market Match and Double Up Food Bucks last year. This will just increase accessibility for local food for people in New Hampshire. Oh my gosh. I'm gonna let Colleen take over.
No problem. Any more questions for Tiffany before we kind of wrap things up? Feel free to jump in, put them in the chat. All right. Well, I think we'd like to use the last about 15 minutes of our session here to kind of talk generally about support and advocacy for these bills that we talked about. We do have the pleasure of having some of our representatives here, and I think they could provide a lot of insight about how to do that, how to email representatives, how to communicate about these bills effectively to our communities. So Peter or Megan, if you guys don't mind jumping in on that, we'd love to kind of go over those things.
Yeah, sure. Happy to do that. I think Peter made an excellent point early on. Making it relevant and personal to your community and what you want to see changing is important. And depending on where the bill is sitting in a House committee, you can email some of the members in the committee or the entire committee so that they all get your information at the same time. And there's links on the General Court website to email each committee in full if you'd like to do that.
Megan, just quickly, people are having some trouble hearing you. I'm not sure if there's a volume issue, but
let me try again. Is that better? Let's see if is that slightly better?
Slightly, I think.
Okay, let's see. I don't know if it's here. I'm going to turn my video off to see if that helps.
Okay.
Maybe that'll help.
I think it's fine. I think if we all just turn up our volume a little bit while Megan's talking, then I think you can hear her. Yeah.
Yep, sorry about that. So yes, one of the things that I was saying is that it's really important to make the whatever communication you're having with the representatives for the bill you're supporting relevant and personal to you and your community. I think that that's really helpful. I think Representative Bixby had mentioned that. And like I did say on the General Court website, you can email a representative individually, or you can or you can email the entire committee so that they all get your information together. And it is helpful, the sooner the better, because we go through those emails, we read them, have a chance to compile that information, and it is really helpful to hear from folks.
Great, thank you. Peter, anything to add on that?
That covers it pretty well. I think what I'd like to reiterate that signing on to a bulk email that is being put out by an organization it is fairly low impact. And if you on the court website, if you go to the House section of the website, and then to the standing committees section, you can go down the standing committees and pick the committee that you're interested in, and then there'll be a link to an email link on that committee's website to email the entire committee. And there's also, I don't think it's up quite yet, but there should be a list of all the current bills in that committee.
That's great. So we'll provide those links again as we follow up with the recording and the notes from this session. Separately, but on the same vein, if somebody wanted to show up for a hearing or testify, how would they go about doing that, or any thoughts and advice about that from either one of you?
Sure. So if you want to go to a hearing in person and just observe the hearing, then the hearing times for bills are listed in the calendar each week. They're also they should be listed along with if a hearing time has been assigned, it should be listed on the bill page on the website. and show up a little bit in advance to make sure you can get in. If it's a very controversial bill, then there might be an awful lot of people, and so it might be a little bit crowded. I would strongly recommend being very well masked in our current pandemic situation. There is not a absolute requirement for masking in the house in the state house buildings, but it is recommended. And the other thing is that if you do want to speak, then that same link that was sent out earlier in terms of being able to sign in on a bill, if you follow the set of questions through, there is one of the options you can say is, do you want to speak on this bill? And you would click on that option, and then you would have to be there in person to speak, and you would be basically listed as put into the list of people who would be speaking, and you would be called up at some point during that hearing.
Great, thank you for that clarification and information. So again, we'll gather these links up, get them out to you guys so you can make sure to either sign on to support or know when these hearings are. So that'll be good information to have. Anything else? I know Rob put in the chat about phone calls. I know we don't do a lot of those anymore, but picking up the phone and dialing to your representatives would be a great option. Tiffany.
So just a note on phone calls.
Sure.
Really, that's one where if you want to ideally either target your own the legislator in your district, or a member of the committee that you potentially have some sort of connection with. Sort of blanket phone calls are not highly effective, and if you call and you get a voicemail, then make sure you leave information about who you are, what the issue is, and where you're from, because that matters a lot. Legislators tend to be much more sensitive to their own constituents.
Right, that makes sense, but it's definitely a good reminder. I think when we're doing this advocacy work, it can get crazy. Megan, did you want to pop in and
Sure. Yeah, thank you. To answer Tiffany's question, which is a great question, generally when you come to the committee, I would also recommend sort of depending on when your bill is scheduled, keeping sort of a feel for how the day is going, if you can. And once you're there in the committee, there's usually a sign-in sheet that you can physically sign in the day you go to hear the hearing, and that will then get given to the chair, and they will work those in and sort of call you forward when they're ready. So
great, thank you for answering that question. I'll kind of open it up to the whole group now. We kind of have about 5 minutes left. Any general questions about really anything we talked about, any of the bills, any of the advocacy and support knowledge that our representatives can give us? Feel free to jump in or put it in the chat, and we can kind of wrap up in that way. I really appreciate everyone, all of our speakers and panelists sharing their knowledge and giving us a crash course on legislative sessions. But yeah, let's open up to questions. If anyone has any. Alan, go ahead.
Just an observation, having done some testimony in the past, is that when you're in a hearing that is crowded and is taking a long time and you're one of the later speakers, many times the chair will indicate that you need to wrap it up. If you're just going to repeat something that somebody else has said, please don't, or at least echo it. What I would also offer as a suggestion is to make some notes. I mean, you can have your printed testimony that you hand out, but to also, I believe it's okay to diverge a little bit if you want to reference something that someone else said and then springboard into your own comment. So that's just a couple of tips that I've picked up over time, is to be flexible, be ready to cut it short if the hearing is going long, because they will ask you to do that. But just have your kicker points. I think it's okay to at least gently rebut something you hear if you need to correct something that perhaps a previous speaker is concerned about. You're going to address that concern in a polite way. So that's what I've learned.
That's great advice. Thank you so much, Alan. That's a great opportunity as well. Any other advice on testifying if those were thinking about it? Go ahead, Tiffany.
Sorry, I didn't actually have one about testifying, but I did want to announce that the New Hampshire Hunger Solutions is purchasing advocacy software. And so we were hoping to get it up and running before the legislative session. However, with that software, it does track all the way down to the state legislature and will allow us to email you action alerts, which will then link directly to who your representatives and senators are, so that you can email them directly about the bills that we're talking about or that we notify you about. So the software that we're going to be using is called Congress Plus. And so hopefully we can get that up and running really, really shortly here. But all that to say that at the top of the document that I had linked to was the ability to subscribe to our mailing list, and all of that will be transitioned right into our software. And then we'll be able to better specify email lists and your interest and things like that once everything's in there. But definitely go through that and sign up for our email list if you're interested in the bills that we talked about, as well as the New Hampshire Farm to School bill.
Awesome. Thanks, Tiffany. That's going to be really exciting and make things a lot easier for everybody. A question from Eric. Is there any feeling of bipartisan support for any of these bills? Any that are kind of bigger priorities that we could help advocate for? And then also acknowledging it might be too early to tell. Any thoughts on that from anyone who presented?
Yeah, I mean, with regard to the solid waste stuff, if I can, I think this is something that we have been working on in the legislature for quite some time. I served on a study committee 2 years ago, which was HB 413, that looked at sort of where we were going, just to get our feet on the ground and figure out really the magnitude of the problem. And so I think that there's a lot of bipartisan support in many of the things that we've talked about today, from whether it's solid waste or it's hunger solutions or farm to school stuff. I think that you could find a lot of that there. I don't know it, Representative Bixby.
I would agree with Megan on that.
Well, that's good news. I love to hear that.
Okay. Just one more thing about testifying. This may be really obvious, but be polite, and don't impute motives to anybody else. You can say you can disagree with someone. If someone comes out with what they claim to be a fact, and you know that it is, that is different, then you can say, according to such and such a source, this is actually what the fact is. But don't impute motives to other speakers, and don't impute motives to legislators, because that is a way to really get people pissed off fast.
I think that's a great reminder, and also a nice way to end. Let's just all be polite. We'll just be polite, and that'll be a good way to go. Well, thank you, everyone. We're just about done here. We have 1 minute. This was a great, again, crash course and a little bit of a roundup for our legislative session. A lot of exciting bills to support. So again, we'll follow up with a recording and notes and links, and it'll be a good session, hopefully. Fingers crossed for everybody. Thank you again to our panelists, and thank you for everyone for being here. And join us next month, same time. Same time.